Thank you, everyone. Hello and welcome to this Knowledge Café. Thank you for being so many today. It's an exciting topic. My name is Janyl, and I'm the Knowledge Lead for Europe and Central Asia, Kyrgyz Hub. Today, we have a great topic of a transfer, a model of transfer from 10 to 12-year school model. This is an exciting topic, which I know is relevant for many of our countries, for many of our communities, and today we are having two great experts who have kindly agreed to join us and share their view and insights on the experience and the record two countries, Mongolia and Kyrgyzstan, have in taking this road from 10 to 12-year school education. Our first presenter is Mr. Lufsandor Tsogdov, an expert with a lot of years of experience in school, but also TVET level of education. He's a recipient of the Australian and the Japanese government awards, and he has played key roles in designing and implementing the school reform, um, transferring from 10 to 12-year school model. Our second presenter is Mrs. Baktagul Shamshidinova. She's the director or the principal of the Department of Education Quality Development under the Ministry of Education of the Kyrgyz Republic. These two experts have joined us today to share a lot of information with you, to answer your questions. Our communities, both from Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Ukraine, and Kyrgyzstan, have submitted already prior to the event several questions of their concern, and our experts will do their best to answer these questions today. The way this presentation goes is that the first presenter delivers his presentation, answers questions and answers. Then we have a second presentation from Kyrgyzstan, from Mrs. Baktagul Shamshidinova, and then we have a panel discussion. And I hope we have enough time because usually we have a lot of questions and the interest is high. But without taking too much of your time now, I have the honor of giving the floor to Mr. Lufsandor Tsogdov. Would you please start, Professor? And Marina, would you please share the presentation of Mr. Lufsandor? Thank you very much.
Hello, I will soon begin my presentation. I'm ready. So I have prepared my presentation about the experience of Mongolia in carrying out a transition to 12-year education system. And this presentation will be as follows. First, I will talk about our rationale for adopting a 12-year school system. Then I will talk about the political commitment and legal framework for making this 12-year school transition. I will talk about the steps we took, first switching to a 11-year school model and then to a 12-year school system model. I'll talk about the challenges and critique we faced, and finally talk about the lessons learned from our experience in transitioning to a 12-year school system. Please switch the slide, please. So I'd like to talk a bit about our rationale for adopting a 12-year schooling system. In the past, we had a 10-year school system, and we had three reasons for this. First of all, well, the reason we wanted to change to a 12-year system is, first of all, our desire to align with international norms and standards. The main school entry age is 6 years of age, and most students finish their education at the age of 18. And the number of school years completed in the general education program would typically be 12 years. And the school structure that we chose was 6 years, then 3 years, and 3 years for the different stages of primary and secondary school. Next slide. The other reason for making this transition is that citizens of the country need to have the opportunity to study abroad after completing their general education. And for this, they need to have their education recognized internationally. This was an important reason for making this transition. And in doing so, we give students the possibility to study abroad, to also work abroad, to be trained internationally after completing their general education, and also to apply for foreign scholarships and grants after completing their education. These were this was the second reason for making this transition. And now the third reason for making this change. In Mongolia, we reformed our national curriculum in accordance with the democratic changes that have taken place in our country. We needed to, first of all, change our standards, modernize subject content and subject choices and syllabi in regards with the following key ideas. First of all, science needs to be taught in a politically unbiased manner. Also, we need to promote democratic principles, principles of human rights and civic values. Further, we wanted to equip students with 21st century skills such as computer literacy, foreign languages, particularly English, and so forth. Also, we wanted to decentralize the national curriculum policy and adopt a student-centered, person-centered teaching approach. And these were the three main rationales for adopting a 12-year schooling system. So once again, to align with international norms and standards. Secondly, fulfill the requirements for acceptance and recognition of Mongolian general education documents in foreign countries. And finally, to reflect the democratic changes and transitions taking place in our own country. In the next part of my presentation, I'll talk about the legal framework for making this 12-year school transition. So first of all, the political commitment related to a 12-year school program is expressed in a number of documents. There are two main Parliament resolutions from 2002, resolution number 15, which shifted the system from a 10-year to a 11-year system, 5 plus 4 plus 2 years, changing the starting age of schooling from 8 years of age to 7. The second Parliament resolution was number 89, passed in 2006. And in this resolution, the Parliament amended the law to allow for the implementation of a 12-year education system in a 6 plus 3 plus 3 system. And under this resolution, the children began starting their education at the age of 6, not 7. And based on these two Parliament resolutions, we had the legal framework to make a 12-year to transition to a 12-year school system. Next slide, please. Okay, With these two resolutions, we had the necessary legal framework for making the transition to a 12-year school system. After Parliament Resolution number 15 concerning the transition to an 11-year system, the starting age changed from 8 to 7. And after this, 5 orders were issued by the Ministry of Education. And also, in the next slide, I'll explain how this transition to an 11-year system was made. Please move to the next slide. And then in 2006, Parliament Resolution number 89 was adopted concerning the transition to a 12-year education system. In total, there were 18 decrees issued by the Ministry of Education and also 33 policy documents issued by the Ministry of Education. And all of them were compiled into a single handbook called The Policy of Shifting the System to a 12-year school system and Recommendations on its Implementation. Next slide. So here we can see the two guidebooks. The one with the blue title was about the transition to an 11-year school system. And the orange cover is the guideline handbook talking about the transition to the 12-year system. As you can see, ADB, the Asian Development Bank, helped make it possible for us to publish this document. Next slide, please. So, as I said, there was a two-stage approach made to transition to a 12-year school system. The first stage was to transition to an 11-year school system. And this took place in 2 consecutive school years from 2004 to 2005. And the second year was 2005 to 2006. And this transition took place over this time period and involved a system of 5 plus 4 plus 2 years. The second stage of the process involved a transition from a 11-year school model to a 12-year school model. And this transition took place in 2 parts, from 2008 to 2009, and then from 2014 to 2015. The transition from a 10-year school model to a 11-year school model, and then finally to a 12-year school model, was completed over a total period of 7 academic years, 7 school years. As I said already, this two-stage system is how we chose to carry out this important transition. Next slide, please. So here on this chart, so on this slide here, we can see the schedule for switching from a 10-year to an 11-year school model, and then from an 11-year to a 12-year schooling model. During the first stage, we opened a so-called zero group, group zero. And children of 7 years of age entered this group number 0 in kindergarten. This was a so-called 0 grade, and it was set up first in a kindergarten and then later in schools. Then we were very much criticized in this process, and people were upset with the fact of children jumping from kindergarten to school, and they felt this was harmful to their further education. On this graph, we can see some arrows which show the process of moving children from from grade to grade, from the 5th grade to the 7th grade, passing the 6th grade. And this process took place over a period of 7 academic years when we finally had completed the transition to a 12-year system by 2015. And you can see how the first transition took 2 years and the last part of the transition took 5 years. I think you can see here on the graph how we took how we did this in 2 stages. Next slide, please. On this slide, I have pointed out the key takeaways from this process. First of all, children age 6 enter the first grade of a 12-year school system in 2008, 2009 for the first time. As for 7-year-old children, they enter the first grade of a 11-year school system in 2008, 2009. We've now completed this process, and pupils who have finished the 5th grade of an 11-year school in 2008, 2009 had to skip 6th grade and enter the 7th grade in the new 12-year school system. And then those who graduate the 11-year school system in 2013, 2014 were the last to study under the 11-year school system. As for challenges and criticism that we faced in this process, first of all, the number of children enrolled in schools increased by 2 grades. There were 2 new classes, 2 new grades of 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds. We also needed lots of new teachers, and they needed to be trained. This was a significant problem. Also, we needed more school facilities, and the Asian Development Bank invested a lot in building new schools in Mongolia. Also, we needed more funding for this process. In order to increase budgets to run a 12-year school system, we needed to increase our education budget. And so, with the aid of international donors and the ADB, we were able to obtain necessary financial resources. The greatest challenges had to do with the use of 3 different curricula simultaneously. And this was a significant challenge, and it took 7 years to resolve. And finally, the limited human resources that we had at our availability. Next slide, please. Here, I have outlined the critique that we faced during this period. We faced criticism all the time. We were criticized because 6 years was supposedly too early for children to enter school. And this idea was not consistent with the Mongolian context, especially for people living a nomadic lifestyle. And so it was difficult for people to adapt to having their children enter school at the age of 6. We were also criticized for school environments and school infrastructure, which supposedly was unsuitable for children, for 6-year-old children, in terms of care for the children and security and safety. We also faced a lot of criticism and continue to face criticism because when children enter a 12-year school system, this causes family separation in rural areas. In other words, uh, in order to care for children who are of different ages, couples would often have to separate. One would care for the young children, and another would care for herds. Also, there were issues around the changes in the national curriculum. And all of this criticism was constantly an issue, and some of it is still an issue in our society today. Next slide, please. I would like to talk a bit about lessons learned from our experience in transitioning to a 12-year school system. As you've understood now, we made a slow transition. First, we transitioned to an 11-year school system and then to a 12-year system. And so the transition from a 12-year to from a 10 to a 12-year school system, this is a complex task that involves changes in the education sector in a number of areas simultaneously. It's important to restructure school formats, reform national curricula and syllabi nationwide, implement different curricula and textbooks nationwide simultaneously. And also, we had to retrain our staff and improve and build capacity. So these were some serious challenges that we faced in the process of transitioning from a 10-year to a 12-year school system. And it's important to have political will, political commitment, legal framework, very clear transition time frames, and also financial and human resources. And so political commitment needs to be very firm and specific. Otherwise, it's difficult to make this transition. What is even more important than commitment and transition timelines is to have a task group that represents all the different stakeholders, different organizations that need to be at the core of this school infrastructure reform. This is all I have to say today. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Lufsandorj, for this comprehensive presentation and for the many topics you have raised in it. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions from the audience. We already have a couple. If you please answer the question from our Tajik colleague, the national coordinator. How many kids on average are admitted yearly into the first class in Mongolia? And is there a prep program in a 0 level class? Or does the school start right away with the primary curriculum? Professor Luftendorf, I think you're muted. Okay. We are now having a short questions and answers session because the questions are still fresh. The first question to Mr. Luftendorf was.
Yes, this is a very important question that you've raised. In the book here that I'm holding in my hand, we see that there are statistics for each year. When children enter school at the age of 6, we can see here the stats for the number of children who have enrolled in school. And at the time this was published, we had a plan for roughly how many children would enroll in the first grade. And each year we also have calculations that we make in advance before the school year begins. I can't say exactly right now. I know that we had stats for this before we had children enter the first class. In other words, we already had projections of roughly how many children would enter. Second question, please. So the year that we began our transition over a period of 2 academic years, we had a 0 class, but this no longer exists. Children who enroll in school enter the first grade immediately.
Okay, thank you. There are 2 more questions. One is, I think, very important. Is there in Mongolia a system of alternative school books from different printing houses, or is there a single unified state line of school books that are to be used by all universally in the country? And also a sub question, how did you renew the entire line of the school books while you were going through the process of transferring from 10 to 12-year school? Would you please answer, Professor?
Our textbooks are not centered around publishing houses. This year, we are transitioning to that type of system, but on a national level, we had a single textbook system, especially for the higher grades, 10, 11, and 12 grades. After completing the transition to a 12-year system, of course, we now have a single textbook system. We announce a tender, a bid for publishing houses, and then choose the textbook that they produce that meets our criteria best. The whole timeline of these changes was monitored by the government in the process.
All right, all right. One more question from Ukraine. How did you increase the number of teachers to cover the entire academic year? How did you manage, I guess, to provide sufficient number of teachers to cover the entire academic year? It's one of the points you also mentioned, Professor, that there was a lack of teachers.
Yes, there was a deficit of teachers, and this was one of the greatest problems we faced. In the 10-year system, when children go to school from the age of 8 to 18, at the age of 8, children are more or less ready for school already. But when children enroll in school at the age of 6 or 7, they would need a whole army of teachers who are specially trained to teach children of this age. And the way we resolve this is we involve students from pedagogical universities. And by the way, we still have a deficit of teachers. and we have involved students from the last year of the pedagogical university to help cover the deficit. But even now, we still see a significant deficit. At the time, however, we looked at the syllabi of pedagogical uh, universities. However, what we did not do is import teachers from other countries. We managed to solve it through our own efforts.
We might take one more question before giving the floor to our next speaker. And this is a short one. What is the process of the teacher recruitment and how to separate teachers for all the grade needs? I think this is a more general question, probably not, pertaining to the specific topic. But Mr. Luxemdorf, if you could answer it shortly, or maybe if you want, we can leave it for later on for the panel discussion. Just let us know which way, what do you prefer?
Thank you. So we have a system where teachers are trained for kindergarten, teachers are trained for primary school, and for general education. And so in this way, teachers for primary grades can graduate from so-called pedagogical technicums, and graduates of pedagogical universities then become teachers of the middle class, the middle grades, so grades 7 through 9, or teachers of the older grades, the last 3 grades.
All right. I think for this specific short questions and answer sessions, we are done. We really should give the floor to our next wonderful speaker, Mrs. Baktagul Shamshiddinova from the Kyrgyz Department of Education Quality Development under the Ministry of Education in Kyrgyzstan. Any other questions that were left unanswered in the chat, we will definitely try to answer them later on during the panel discussion, which will surely follow. So, Mrs. Shamshiddinova, the floor is yours. Thank you, Professor Lusandorsh, for a wonderful presentation and for answering all the questions. Please remain with us and bear with us for the rest of the session.
Yes. Hello, dear colleagues. I'm trying to share my presentation and make sure that everything works. I hope you can see everything here. You can hear and see everything, I hope. Okay, then I can begin. So the transition to a 12-year school system. This is a process that in Kyrgyzstan had been discussed broadly since 2010. And like all the international community, Kyrgyzstan also made this choice to transition to a 12-year system. As you know, we had already made the transition to an 11-year system a long time ago. And up to this year, we had followed this system. And what was it that caused us to transition to a 12-year system? As our speaker from Mongolia said, there were a number of reasons for making this transition, and our reasons were the same. Children who wanted to study abroad would have to study an additional year, and then after this, they would have the opportunity to study abroad in universities and other structures. And because we want to be a part of the international community and walk in step with others, we decided to make this transition. Also, in terms of political will in our country, everyone supported this transition. And this was a good rationale for making this transition. And one other factor has to do with the fact that our children, before they enter first grade, they would take part in these special preparatory courses. And we decided to take that existing structure and turn it into our first grade. And that's how we managed the transition to a 12-year system. This transition is very substantial, and we prepared for it for a number of years. And it has a long story, a long history. All the difficulties that Mongolia faced, we faced and continue to face as well. This is the first year where we are completing the 11-year system and 12-year system at the same time under an integrated program. I'll show you when we get to that slide. And this transformation was not just to add a year to the education system. It is more of a qualitative renewal of the education system with new approaches to monitoring and assessment in accordance with the demands of modern life. The 12-year education system is better at creating competencies and knowledge in students. It makes them more practical in their approaches, and it brings us closer to international standards. I'd like to switch to the next slide. Dinara, I need a minute. Why isn't my presentation moving? Dinara. Okay, I apologize. So I'd like to talk about some policy documents. Dear colleagues, I apologize once again. This slide has to do with policy documents and materials that regulate the instruction process. So we have specific policy documents. First of all, the government educational standard. We have a standard curriculum with standards for different subjects, with a timeline of instruction, and also we have a concept for making the transition to a 12-year system. Here on this slide, you can see the main documents, policy documents, which regulate this process. We have, for example, a cabinet of ministers order. We have an order from the Ministry of Education. I'm not going to talk about each of these documents, but this slide portrays all the important documents which were behind this transition. And it's important to mention that the basic curriculum plans included instruction in Kyrgyz, Russian, Uzbek languages. And all of these materials were put together for 63 subjects, 83 time schedules, and methodological recommendations. And so all of these materials serve to help schools and teachers transition to this updated instruction system. You can see on the website of the Ministry of Education all of these documents. Now let's move on to values and expectations. As a result of this transition, we wanted to see students who were more able, more capable of making their own choices in life, more adaptive, more independent, more hardworking, with better civic values, more openness, more sensitivity, and confidence in their own worth, their own self-worth. These are values that are outlined in education systems such as PISA and other international systems. Children need to be able to adapt to a rapidly changing world. They need to understand digital instruments, the changing labor market, new financial standards. And so it's important not to just teach subjects, but to form competencies that will help children in their social and professional lives. As for the current school year, schools have begun working according to these updated methodological and policy documents. And it was very scary, to be honest, because over the past 2 years, the government standards were changing. Lots of methodological materials and curricula were prepared. Teachers needed to meet with parents and conduct fora. And we trained over 3,000 or 4,000 teachers who went to our wonderful lake, Issyk, and there we had our fora where teachers learned about all the new aspects of the instruction process. And then these trainers, these teachers, went back to their schools and trained administrators and teachers back in their school. The main changes have to do with the new textbooks and workbooks, and also methodological standards. This is very important because the teacher is the main figure that needs to be able to explain and convey and explain and convey these values. And there was a lot of criticism and critique of this process, like we heard from Mongolia. And we continue to hear this criticism because we've only been working under this new model for 1 year. But our main supports are, of course, the government standards, the new methodological standards, for example, for English, math, science, Russian language, and Russian literature. And in addition to this, there are special training materials for teachers that have videos that teachers can view online to help them better prepare for their lessons. And this has helped teachers to better understand the contents of these changes and apply these new methods in practice. Perhaps the most interesting part is our stage by stage process of transitioning to a 12-year school system. As you can see, children would not just skip classes, they would go through integrated programs with the materials from 2 grades combined in one. We can see here the blue blocks are the 11-year system. The yellow blocks are the 12-year system, and the red blocks are integrated programs. So we can see that it's the first, second, fifth, and seventh classes that are right now in the process of transitioning. So we have the same system as Mongolia, 6 years, 3 years, and 3 years. The same model as Mongolia. Our grade 0 was taken from the Nariste program that pre-existed in Kyrgyzstan. And children who were not enrolled in the Nariste program were enrolled in the first grade. 5th and 6th grades were integrated into a single class. So the first half of the year, they studied under the 5th grade curriculum, and then the second half under the 6th grade curriculum. And then the next year, they would transition to 7th grade. What will take place next year in 2026, 2027? We can see that, well, we need to be able to explain to the teachers and the parents. So children who have entered the first 3 classes, they will continue as is, but the 5th grade students who were studying in the fifth and 6th integrated program will be in 7th grade next year. That's the main jump that will take place. Students who were in the 7th grade last year, next year will be in the 8th grade. So they'll have new curricula, new textbooks. The 8th, 9th, and 10th grades continue studying under the previous 11th grade system. So as you can see, by looking at this chart, we can see that in 2029, 2030, we'll have our first graduates from the 11th grade system, 11 grade system, and those who have started under the new 12-year standard from the very beginning, they will graduate in 2036, 2037. So this table shows how we will gradually transition to a full 12-year model. Here we see what we can expect from the current school year. In the Ministry of Education of Kyrgyzstan, we have 4 special organizations. First of all, KAO, which develops government standards and subject standards. They create methodological materials to help teachers. We also have a Republican Institute for Teacher Training. They train teachers once every 5 years for teachers to be able to increase their qualifications. This institute is currently being updated, currently being renewed. The Republican Institute will only write modules and train trainers going forward. In this institute, 7 oblast methodological centers will be created. And under these methodological centers, there will be 24, 27 territorial centers for teacher training. Not so much for teacher training, but there will be specialists there whose job it will be to support teachers in the area. And we have another structure that is preparing textbooks. There are over 100 people working in this department. We get a lot of criticism from teachers, from parents who say that the textbooks aren't enough. There aren't enough textbooks for every student. And the country has earmarked a lot of funds for these textbooks. And in our country, we have over 1 million children in school. And a number of these grades, grades 1, 2, 5, 6, and 7, have received updated textbooks and are studying under the new curriculum. The 4th department is the department that performs diagnostics, monitoring, and assessment. Our department didn't just sit and wait for the year to pass so that we could begin our monitoring process. Over the year, during the transition process, after half a year, we conducted diagnosis of our teachers, particularly for science, math, and English. I won't talk about this right now because it's an entire presentation of its own. But the data that we obtained was passed on to the Ministry of Education and for the and to the other departments to be able to make decisions to help better raise the qualifications of our teachers. And recently, we also conducted a survey of teachers where we included 5 different sections: government standards, subject standards, teacher training, textbooks, and assessment of the barriers that teachers face in the transition process. And we obtained very interesting data from this survey. 50% agree with the entire process. I think these are mainly young teachers who are who have good digital skills and they're able to orient themselves. But we also face a lot of problems because many teachers still don't understand the new subject standards. Many of them do not have enough materials to prepare their lessons. Many do not understand the process of territorial and formatting assessment. And so recently we had a big roundtable event where we discussed the results of this survey. And considering all the critique that we received, we discussed the results, and I think that we will soon see some official decisions made to address these criticisms. I hope now that that you have understood and gained something from my presentation. Thank you for giving me the chance to talk about this important transition for our country. Everyone is talking about this in our country right now. Parents, teachers, and administrators. because children are at the center of everything. We need to do everything possible to make sure that our students can gain a lot from their education. Recently, we had a big pay raise made for teachers, and we can see a lot happening in this area. We are doing a lot. We are committed to increasing the quality of our education, and I thank you for your support. We've taken away many experiences from other countries such as Mongolia, which over a very brief period of time made the transition first to an 11-year system and then to a 12-year system. And so I want to thank all of you for your support and attention. And if you have any questions, I will be happy to answer them. Thank you very much.
All thanks are to you and to Professor Lufthansa for agreeing to take part in this event and to deliver such information-rich presentations. Some questions to you, Mrs. Samshidinova. The first one is, how many years does the transition from an 11-year school system to a 12-year school system take? And I think this was a question from Professor Lufthansa, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it was a question from him, from your Mongolian counterpart to you.
Коллеги, ну вы не поверите.
Dear colleagues, you won't believe me when I say this. If other countries take decades to make this transition, it took us only 1 or 2 years. And of course, there were lots of experts who said, let's start first with a pilot project. Let's take part of the schools and have them transition, then we'll analyze the results. And then after this analysis, maybe we'll transition to a 12-year system, but maybe we'll cancel it all. Let's train teachers, let's print some books, let's find funding and so forth. But our political will was such that in only 1 year, we managed to prepare everything. And in the process of 1 year, we are carrying out this process. It took very little time. We were filled with fear, of course. We thought that everyone would want to shoot us, but this did not happen. Our children are now studying. Teachers and parents are gradually getting used to this, and I can see that things are working out. And I want to thank our Minister of Education for her support and political will. Of course, there's criticism, but there would be critique in any case, even if we had a pilot project, even if we chose not to do this transition.
It is for both speakers, but I would like you to answer first, Dr. Gulitsa Burjanovna. What will the 12th year of schooling focus on more? Is it specialization? Is it practical skills? Or is it academic preparation, academic excellence, as they say? What would the last year of school focus on more?
Конкретно на все, коллеги.
Yes, specifically everything mentioned here. I forgot to say the most important thing in my presentation, professional orientation. So in grades 11 and 12, the emphasis will be on professional orientation. This year, the Kyrgyz Academy of Education is already working on a process of professional profiling. They will have a selection of profiles, and we're discussing this right now. It'll take a long time. It'll probably take 2 years before we finalize the process, the number of profiles, and we need to find specific locations where children will get this professional training. So that's the academic part. Secondly, not just knowledge, but also skills, the ability to analyze. And we understand how difficult it is for our children. We need to emphasize not just knowledge, but skills, the ability to apply knowledge gained in school in their real life. And this third emphasis is professional profiling.
Professor Luftendorf, if you're still here.
So as for what I should focus here on, the transition from 10 to 11 years, then from 11 to 12 years, was a Well, first of all, we focused on academic results, but now we are switching our focus to competencies and professional profiling. That's our new focus. Under the 12-year system, which we have been following now for quite a bit of time, this year we're getting our first graduates under the new system. And after fully implementing this system, our next question will be, what else can we do? What should we do next? And this question is still being asked. There's still questions about the quality of education. Every grade, every school, primary school, middle school, and high school, each of them have their tasks, their own particular tasks. In primary school, children get basic foundational knowledge. In middle school, they gain deeper knowledge on many subjects. And in the upper grades, children focus on competencies and professional profiling. That's the system we currently have. Right now, our Institute of Education is developing a system of assessing the results under the 12-year school system. The upper three grades will focus on professional competencies and professional profiling, whereas primary and middle school will focus on basic foundational knowledge. Thank you.
Question about teacher training in Mongolian universities also came in. The question is, how many years do students study and how does the employment process work for them after the graduation? I think this is a question to Professor.
So we have a pedagogical university where I personally work and teach. It used to be called the Pedagogical Institute. Now it's called Pedagogical University. And here, kindergarten teachers and primary school teachers are taught, and also teachers of middle school and high schools. Our students study for 4 years, and 3/4 of our graduates end up working as teachers, but 1/4 goes to work in other sectors of the economy. And we continue facing a deficit of teachers in our country, but over the past few years, together with the Ministry of Education, we've been implementing a very original policy. If there's someone else, for example, an engineer or a doctor, someone of a different profession, they have the opportunity now to retrain as teachers. And they will only have to study a shorter period of time to become a teacher. And now we are working on providing this opportunity for people of other professions to become teachers as well. This was one of the solutions we found to solve the problem of a deficit of teachers.
Thank you, Professor. Great. I think we're slowly but surely approaching the end of our session. To make sure no questions are left unanswered, I just see that there are a lot of thanks in the chat to both presenters, praising the effort that both countries' systems and personalities and teachers have undertaken to actually make sure this works, the reform works. There is one small question which I think, if I read it right, asks, I don't know whom exactly, to briefly tell about the solution to managing equipment problems at schools. I think that's what it means. I guess it means that some of the schools were facing challenges in terms of, equipment and labs and classrooms and computers. And I guess if any of you, our dear presenters, want to share your insights briefly on that point, please do so.
Тий. Монголоос эхэлж, эндээс эхэлчихгүй тий, манайхаас эхэлж. Тий. Тэгээ энэ сургуулийн орчин бүрдүүлэх
I can begin. Infrastructure in our schools is a significant problem in all of our education system. Our country has a very broad geography with a sparse population. In some provinces have schools with very small numbers of students. In the capital of Ulaanbaatar, there are many students and not enough schools. So children often move from provincial schools to city schools, to urban schools. And in order to provide all schools with the same level of equipment and infrastructure, we will need quite a bit of time. In Europe and in Finland, we see that there are universal standards all across the country, but we are still striving to reach this level. Also, we have limited funds for education. Our donors help us, of course, but we have not been able yet to solve all of the problems in the area of infrastructure and equipment. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. Infrastructure is also an issue for Kyrgyzstan. But what I'd like to say is that when this big reform began, now in Kyrgyzstan, we see that notebooks are being produced in Kyrgyzstan. We have a special national program, Altın Kazı, and these laptops that are produced are then provided to, I can't give you an exact number, but all the teachers of science subjects, all math teachers, and all English teachers have received now a personal laptop. And this laptop already contains all the methodological aids, the textbooks in digital form, and all the materials they need to prepare their lessons. And this is a great support for teachers. The other teachers are waiting now for their laptops, which are being prepared. Secondly, I can say that 99% of schools have internet and are using internet. Almost every school has at least one computer class with 20 computers. Last year, through the World Bank, 2,200 schools were equipped with computers and internet connections. So first, we had to find out which schools had equipment and which didn't. And the schools with very poor infrastructure receive these computers with internet connections. Laboratories for chemistry, biology, and physics are a significant problem. And through an ADR program, Asian Development Bank, ADB, a number of schools now have laboratory classes. And in these schools, there are now going to be up-to-date equipment, up-to-date biology, chemical, and physics equipment. And these will be hub schools, and they're outfitted in such a way that one or two rayons can have their children come to this school for laboratory subjects. And over time, of course, laboratories will be established in other schools more broadly as well. So that's the situation currently. And in our country right now, we are focusing on conducting surveys in digital format. And now the ministry is conducting different types of assessment through computers. We have our own assessment system, which we began using online in 2023. PISA also has its own system of assessment, but it is offline. And this suggests that our country is now quite technically developed because we can now conduct these types of studies and assessments online. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your answers. I don't think. Oh, okay. We have one more question, and I think in terms of time, we can still take it, if you don't mind, because it's a good one. What is the approved normative timeline and period of learning and education based on the facilitated and modernized programs of learning? If I translate it correctly, it is also available in Russian in the chat. And what is the structure of the main modules when it comes to correlation of theory to practice? Now, this is a big question. I think it comes from a specialist. So, Professor Lufsandors, did you want to answer it?
Энэ төрөвчлсөн сургалт гэдэг нь нөгөө багшаа бэлтгийг хэлж гэнэ үү? Эсвэл 12.
Yes. You mean training of students or training of teachers?
I think he means
pedagogue.
teachers.
Training of teachers. Okay. So yes, due to the deficit of teachers in our schools, we are retraining specialists of other subjects. And we start with a 45-day period where after 45 days, we issue a certificate giving them the right to teach. This does not mean, however, that they are now education system specialists. And we've faced a lot of criticism from society for this program. And so now we are making a more in-depth program for training teachers coming from different lines of different specializations. Now, if someone already has a higher education, they don't need to spend 4 years to become a teacher. But 45 days is probably too little. And so we're adjusting this right now. As for the second question about theory and practice, if we look at the competence-based model in post-Soviet countries, we became used to the old approaches that we've now left behind us, and now we take a more pragmatic approach towards the instructional process and focus more on competencies, which are now the focus of our attention. And people who so specialists of other fields who are retraining as school teachers receive training in instruction methods. They don't receive theory. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Бактыгуль Сабыржановна, Бактыгуль Сабыржановна?
Да-да-да, я, если...
Yes, Ms. Shaydinova, if I understood the question correctly, not teachers, but young people who already have a higher education can retrain as teachers. And in our country, it takes a year and a half. So, for example, someone is an engineer and this person decided to go to school and teach physics or chemistry or biology. The person can train for a year and a half and get a diploma of a teacher of physics, chemistry, or information science, or whatever. It used to take more time, but now we're undergoing a significant systemic reform because the school system needs to be closely tied to universities. And since we're going through a school reform right now, we need to have a similar parallel reform taking place in higher education because only systemic reforms can produce the results we need. And this is how we hope to solve the problem of teacher deficit. We have a deficit of teachers, we have a deficit of seats in classes, deficit of textbooks. But as I said, we have a lot of funding now earmarked for education. 29 schools have been built over the past year, And I think this is more than over the past 20 or 30 years. And because we're facing overpopulation in Bishkek, the capital, 9 schools were built in Bishkek alone. If we had to choose a role model, we would choose Mongolia because they've taken a lot of steps already. So thank you very much for sharing your experience.
All right. I think there are no more questions in the chat. Anyways, if you want to pose your question or you think about starting a further discussion, I think today has been just a very beginning. I hope that today was just the very beginning of a longer exchange of expertise, experience, and knowledge. I think both our experts did a great job today by providing excellent presentations, but also answering all the questions in much detail and with a lot of knowledge. So for that, I'm deeply grateful. I'm also very grateful to all the participants. I'm extending all my best wishes to our wonderful interpreters who have done a great job today. It has not been easy. Please do not forget to fill out post-event survey. This is very important for us because we want to continue being useful. Here it is on the screen. You can scan the QR code and fill out the survey. We hope to be able, with your support and on your demand, to conduct a lot more of these activities, to stay in touch. And if you have any other ideas or suggestions on the questions and on the topics that you might want to suggest to us, please feel free to reach out. We're always happy to hear from you. Once again, thank you so much to our presenters, to our organizers, to our experts, to our interpreters, and to all who are here today. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.